You're listening to Get to Know World of Warships, a podcast created by Boggzy and Synpax.
Hello, everybody! This is a very exciting day. Welcome back to Get to Know World of Warships. I'm once again joined by my, I guess, intrepid co-host Borla. Good morning, Borla. How are you?
Good morning, Boggzy. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. I live in Los Angeles where it never snows. So, ha 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 ha. Also, that being said, I'm very sorry if you and your family have experienced hardships because of this. The LA people always get teased about wildfires and not being prepared for it, so let it snow.
We have a lot of snow, but where I'm at, we're prepared for it. Unfortunately, I think there's some folks down south that are not quite used to that.
When Texans start complaining about snow and weather, there's just this little smile that spreads across my face that my mother would be very ashamed of.
Because Texans try to be tough about everything except an inch of snow.
Oh, what do you guys got fires? Why don't you go in and clean out the underbrush? Huh? They always have Texans always have very helpful suggestions whenever California decides to spontaneously combust. They always have very, very helpful suggestions on how we could avoid that in the future. So.
It's weird they have Texas versions of all those big trucks and SUVs, but they can't take the Texan versions out in the snow.
That's a shame, isn't it? Again, that being said, we're very sorry if you have experienced hardship about it, because we actually have lots of friends in Texas and other southern states, and we hope it eases up on you guys soon. That being said, enough banter for us, because this is very exciting. We have, arguably, the face of Wargaming. I'm sure you've seen him before. He has a very disarming smile, and hopefully that's not a trap. So please, everybody, say hello to Mr. Conway. Hello, Conway.
Good morning, evening, afternoon. Hi. I just realized that you introduced me as having a disarming smile, and this is a podcast, so I'm screwed, aren't I?
I've been heard if you smile while you speak, it comes across in your voice.
I mean,
that's true.
It is true. It's the truth that it does, and not only that, but like I said off camera, you have a off mic. You have you learned English with a British accent, which means that Americans will instantly be predisposed to enjoy whatever you say. It's just how it works. We may have rebelled a long time ago, but we still sort of look up to you as the big brother. So that's just how it works. But you have very kindly come on to talk to us specifically about yourself, but also about the more recent purchasing of King of the Sea by Wargaming, which is a huge deal, and we're really grateful that you're coming on. So can we just begin by letting the audience know who you are and what you do with Wargaming?
Yes, so my name is Luke, also known as Mr. Conway on the interwebs. I'm Community Engagement Lead for World of Warships in Europe. So that's a weird title right there, a mouthful. What that means basically is I do things like run tournaments. I used to run offline events before COVID was a thing. We try and engage a lot on our live streams and kind of just try and provide like an entertaining atmosphere for our players.
Of course, yeah. And that's how I know you. Certainly, I know you from the World of Warships official live streams. I know you from casting. Not casting, but oftentimes hosting things like King of the Sea. And that's where I got to be familiar with you, and I figured out pretty quick that you have a very large fan base of folks who just love your antics and love what you do and love your method of hosting. So,
we like to have fun, right? We are also we're also gamers. We play and we enjoy playing the game, and I think if you have kind of a very relaxed atmosphere on your streams and the things that you do, then that comes across nicely, and then you can have a nice time with the viewers. And I think that's my approach to the whole thing.
Right, it makes perfect sense. So before I set Borla loose on you to talk KoTS, I have one more question about about you and what you do at Wargaming, which is, I've had a lot of people, oddly enough, ask me sort of like how I got into doing this, and it always makes me feel as if they think I'm someone much more important than I really am. But I sort of started explaining, I just did this and I did this and I did this. So if you don't mind telling us how exactly one comes to be the community engagement lead of Wargaming, or at least for Europe and World of Warships. Do you mind if we ask what you did before this?
Absolutely. So look, my origin story, if you're going to call it that, is
Sure.
an interesting one, because it all started out when I came back from just bumming around beaches in the world And my uncle, of all people, and he's now like mid 60s, recommended I try this game called World of Tanks because he really enjoyed it. So I downloaded World of Tanks, played it on my laptop that didn't even meet minimum specs, enjoyed it, and there was a little pop-up in the corner of the garage saying, "Hey, we're looking for staff." In Paris, and I thought like, oh, Paris sounds like an interesting city. I have nothing better to do. Might as well send an application. So I did that and packed my bag, literally my belongings, and moved to Paris. And I started off working customer support there. Working customer support is, it takes a toll on you because it's it can be a little bit harsh, especially when you have to deal with. I don't know. You deal with a lot of negativity and there's a lot of repetition. But I got involved a little bit more in the community side on offline events where I went to help out, and then transitioned into the community team, and then kind of from there jumped across to World of Warships when it became a thing. And then people liked what I did, so now I am what I am.
I mean, at least you were in the beautiful city of Paris and the nice French baguettes that you could get on every corner.
We were. A fun story, though. I absolutely hated it in Paris. Like, cannot stand the place. Look, I have nothing against Parisians and the French people in general, but Paris is not a place I would ever recommend anyone to live. But thankfully, like a few years ago, 2.5 years ago something, we made a collective decision as the World of Warships team to move to Prague because we had a Wargaming office there. And so our whole publishing team of the World of Warships just up and left on a Thursday, and Monday everybody was back at the office in Prague. And now we live here, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's like a really, really beautiful city. Unfortunately, we had the snow just last week, and it's all melting away now. So we're gonna be left with the grey sogginess for the next few days.
Well, so you mentioned Paris specifically, and I just have to digress here for a second because you mentioned that you really didn't like Paris, and I was a little surprised, but at the same time, that was the feeling that I had when I was in Paris in maybe 2007. What was it about Paris that you didn't care for?
Look, don't get me wrong. There are some really, really redeeming aspects about the city. It's beautiful. There's a lot of history, a lot of cool things to look at. The food is fantastic. Like the baguette will get you fat, but they'll make you happy. But it's not a very livable city. It's extremely expensive. It's overcrowded. It's dirty. Like apart from terrorism and crime and all the other issues that the city has, I think it's just too big for its own good. So I'd recommend it for a visit, but I wouldn't recommend it as a place to live.
That's interesting. You mentioned overcrowded. I was there in 2007, about I think May of 2007, and one of the things that I noted when I was walking around was it felt completely empty to me. And maybe I was in the wrong place, but the whole inner part of the city felt empty. There were these just rows upon rows of 4 to 5 story buildings that came right up to the sidewalk. So it just felt like you're walking down this giant hallway, and there was nobody there. It felt lifeless and sad and dark to me.
What month were you there?
It was May,
Was
so
it
it was
August?
right before summer.
May, okay. Then I don't know. I mean, historically in August, they kind of just fold up the sidewalks and everybody leaves Paris to go away. Just
go to the south of France and Spain.
Yeah, like it's. I'm not even kidding. Like half the businesses in the city just close and everybody goes away. But usually that's not the experience I had. And like things like price of apartments are really rough. And in general, like I wouldn't recommend it for people to live. Prague, on the other hand, fantastic. Fantastic.
I've had some friends that lived in Prague and really loved it. I've been to Paris and I liked visiting, like you said, but I have not been to Prague, but it's on my list. But as interesting as all of this is, I think the reason we had you specifically was not to discuss wonderful European cities to visit on vacation once COVID is over, but to talk a little bit about the game, specifically KoTS, as Boggzy mentioned. And we had an episode a while back where we talked about the Verizon tourney, and one of the things that I brought up on that episode is that I expected Wargaming to get much more involved in those types of tournaments. And I didn't prognosticate that KoTS specifically would be picked up, but that made sense to me that you guys did that. So we'd kind of like to learn more about how long Wargaming's been interested in getting KoTS, how, were there previous attempts to get it? What drove your decision? Was it tied to the success that you saw, well over 50,000 viewers at one time for the Verizon tourney? If you could speak to some of those things, I think we'd be very interested.
Sure. Do you want to formulate that into a question, or do you want me to just like
Well,
start
so
rambling? I don't mind either way.
how long has Wargaming wanted to acquire KoTS, and is there any previous history attempts of trying to acquire KoTS?
Okay, so look, this has been more of a recent thing. Specifically when we were talking at Verizon, because we had some other partnerships. I'm sure you've seen like the Verizon offer that customers can get for World of Warships.
Yeah.
They highlighted the possibility and the interest in kind of sponsoring like a competitive tournament, and we thought this is a fantastic idea. Why not? Because World of Warships competitive has never been something that we've been pushing as like a selling point for World of Warships. It's something that we as a company tried with World of Tanks back in the day. You know, there was quite a big World of Tanks kind of esports system in place, but it didn't really work as well. And in my opinion, that's because if for an esport to work well, it needs to kind of come from the ground up and be like a grassroots thing, like KoTS was, right? KoTS started like years and years and years ago when the organizers approached me and said, "Hey, we'd like to do a tournament. Would you be able to support us?" And I said, like, "Yeah, like let's try." But this came up as an opportunity, and initially we were thinking about doing this sponsorship not for a separate tournament, but for King of the Sea. But we couldn't come to an agreement with the organizers because if they, you have to imagine, right? If somebody says like, "Hey, there's $30,000 to win now," then there are a lot of like legal aspects you have to worry about. Things like the responsibility of not paying out the money and taking care of the rules, and like what happens if somebody cheats or if there's like an issue. So there's a lot of things that come with this, and the organizers globally, not just in Europe, were reluctant to do this. So we decided to roll this into a separate tournament. But going forward, we want to be able to do something like this for King of the Sea as well. I mean, King of the Sea is the primary, like, it's the biggest tournament for World of Warships because it's grown organically into this. And if in future we have opportunities like this, we want to be able to take them, not because it brings us like a gigantic benefit, but it's good for the community, it's good for the tournament, it's great for the players, and it makes it a lot more exciting. This doesn't mean that we're going to turn World of Warships into like an esport in brackets, if you know what I mean.
Of course, yeah. Actually, when I talked to Sub a few months ago, one of the most useful things he said was specifically, look, we don't see World of Warships as being an esports game, so we're never going to take it in that direction. And while we value the feedback that comes back from the competitive teams, it has to stay within the realm of, the feedback has to stay within the realm of what will this do to the primary game mode, which seems to be randoms. And that, at least to me, was like, oh, I can take that understanding and apply that to just about any grievance I have and go, well, that's why. That at least is helpful to understand. So I'm curious to know, like, how much of this decision was tied to the success of the Verizon tourney, and also sort of, do we think we're going to see future KoTS seasons be sponsored as well? Is that an option, or is that sort of, hey, that was an awesome thing that happened, but we don't expect it in the future?
So look, I would definitely appreciate if we could get some sponsorship for future KoTS. It's something that we're working on, but it's not as though there's like we're going to have like a line of sponsors around the corner knocking on our door wanting to take over the tournament. So we'll have to see if we can find someone that's interested, if we kind of match and if we can align on expectations. But I would very much like this because for me, KoTS it's the tournament that has gotten the most support from us as well.
Yeah.
We've got in-game content. We have always done a lot of promotion. We've done all the prizing. And so we would like to be able to evolve this going forward if there's an opportunity for it. And either way, this I just want to also clarify, like,
Sure.
The fact that we took over King of the Sea now doesn't mean that King of the Sea is going to really drastically change in the way that it's run. It's still going to be a community tournament. There's still going to be a lot of community involvement in organizing and running it, not just because of the need of manpower, because I think this is one of the nice aspects of this tournament. That's something that we do together with the community and for the community. And I also love how many streamers have been getting involved. I think we've been over like 50 or 60 streamers for the last iteration that were involved in broadcasting at some stage. And this is something that I would like to expand on for the community to sort of come together for KoTS.
Yeah, it's speaking as someone who does cast during KoTS and enjoys it immensely. it's a really wonderful opportunity for somebody who's, maybe a streamer trying to make a name for themselves or a content creator or what have you. It's a really incredible opportunity to sort of apply yourself towards something and then see something immediately come out of it, see some benefit come out. So it's a great opportunity afforded to community members who want to take a step and do something new. So before we get off the Verizon tourney real quick, I want to know if there was anything specific you guys learned from the Verizon tourney's success. Because like Borla said, 52,000 people watching at one point blew everyone away.
That's true. Although I have to dampen your enthusiasm slightly, because obviously this wasn't 52 people, 2,000 people organically watching. That's something I would love to be able to say.
Really?
But obviously there was Twitch featuring involved in this. So we were on the Twitch front page for a significant time during that tournament, which is why the numbers got so big. Another benefit to doing something like sponsorship and partnerships with Twitch and other companies is that you can get that kind of exposure. But in general, we were very happy with the outcome of the Verizon tournament. I think Verizon was happy. Players were happy. It was fun to cast, fun to watch. And I'm sure that the players who walked away with some cash prizes are also quite happy. So in general, I really appreciated doing it. The big difference to KoTS, in my opinion, came from the way the qualification worked, and that the qualification was done in-game. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a cool opportunity, but also not something that I would like to actually push for King of the Sea.
Oh, okay.
And just a little background, Conway, I run the Kill Steal group in North America. We have 3 clans, and we participate in KoTS, and we ran 3 teams last time. We've had a team in the top 8 NA the last 3 KoTS in a row, and we've had other teams that finish in the top 16 or 24. So we're pretty involved, and we have 50, 60, 70 guys in our group, often involved in our KoTS efforts. So there's a lot of interest, a lot of people who enjoy that tournament. And one of the things that I noticed you guys did right away was come out and state some things that were going to happen and not going to happen around people being concerned about CVs, rule changes, ban ships. And it seemed that you guys were very clear you wanted to keep things very much like they were, but you did make one reasonably significant change in saying that you were going to implement the banned ship process that NA has used. And I know the NA guys like that, the EU guys tend not to like that. Could you speak to the reasoning behind wanting to have the banned ships as part of the rules?
Sure. I mean, let me quickly touch on the other aspects, right? Like I know there was this initial outcry, and there was like some tweets and some people saying like, "Oh my God, Wargaming bought KoTS so they can implement CVs," and like there's no benefit for us to do this, right? For me, KoTS needs to be playable, needs to be fun to play, and needs to be fun to watch. And as long as including CVs don't increase the fun playing and the fun watching, I don't see any need to do that. The format as it is quite tried and tested and works well. As to ship banning, I liked what I saw in the past NA KoTS, what kind of the lineups it resulted in. And I also really enjoyed having it happen in the Verizon tournament. I know it's a kind of a contentious point right now, especially because the EU community I think the majority of the EU community in KoTS at least was against ship banning in the past for a variety of reasons, which I can respect and understand. But I would like to try it once on a global scale, for everybody to have the same rule set going forward anyway in each tournament, but I would like everybody to try out the ship banning system once. I think it makes watching it a little bit more interesting because you do see a wider variety of ship lineups, even if those ship lineups might not be the ideal ones for each specific strategy and map. It does force a bit of variety in it, and I think it adds like another aspect of metagaming to the whole process of KoTS, and I appreciate that. And I think from a watcher's perspective, for sure, it's an improvement.
Yeah, we enjoy the ship bans and think it adds to variety. I do know some of the clans feel like, hey, we spent all this time practicing this particular comp and we want to play that comp, and the ship bans can throw it on the head. But I appreciate you digging into that.
Yeah, I also heard people say that it reduces the kind of viewing experience if you have ship bans, because clans don't play as perfectly as they usually would. But I think from a viewer perspective, that's something that's very, very hard to see in most cases anyway. And I think what viewers want to see is an exciting game with lots of action and a bit of upset here and there, and this is something that contributes to that. It's going to make it
I agree.
harder for sure for teams to prep for CODs, and you do need to consider that what happens if, you know, like one or two of my linchpin ships in a setup are banned, and you kind of need to think about what my fallback is for this. But I think that's something that everybody can do with the time that we have. I mean, it's still more than 2 months before the tournament, and I hope that we can finalize the rule set and let everybody know soon. But if this doesn't go well, like if everybody after this says, hey, we hated ship bans, then I think it's definitely a rule that we can and should revisit.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting. I speaking as someone who did cast a number of the last, I guess the final games of the last COTS, what I can say is that in terms of viewer enjoyment, the fact that the ship bans result in multiple teams having to bring multiple strats to the table ahead of time in anticipation of having a few obvious ships banned causes folks to be much more flexible. They have to put in more work. They have to be prepared to not only implement multiple strategies, but also to deal with multiple strategies. You know, from the games that I cast, and the stuff that I watched, what it meant was they may not play perfectly as if they had honed one or two specific ship lineups, but they tend to take more risks, and they tend to be a little more forward thinking because they have to be. And at least in the higher level of gameplay, in my experience, that resulted in very exciting moments and sort of, I don't know what they're going to do here. Let's see who pulls the trigger first and takes a risk.
Yeah, I think it's entertaining for the viewer not to have the exact same lineups or almost same lineups facing each other all the time. And the ship bans make it so you can't do that.
As much fun as 2 Thunderers and, 5 Petropavlovsks is to see over and over and over again, it's fun when someone goes, well, you can't have those ships anymore. Hopefully you're still good at this game without those ships.
That's true.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly, Thunderers are not going to be allowed at all this tournament because they are, of course, no longer available for purchase.
Yeah.
So they're joining the list of ships banned in COTS, which I think is I think it's a good rule, and I think it also like leads to the meta kind of evolving more, because you can't always rely on those oldies but goodies.
Yeah, is that something that's gonna do you folks have a plan, any sort of plan on this ship will be banned for 6 months or a year or what have you? I know that was in the questionnaire, I think, in terms of how long should something. Oh, that was in reference to new ships, like the Italian line and whatnot.
Yes, so we launched a survey just to check what the community's current feeling was on some of the rules. Among that was the fact that like ships that have been removed for sale, should they be removed or not? And I think they should be. I think as unlikely as it is that a team full of new players is going to make it through to COTS, I really want people to be on the same footing, and I don't want there to be a situation where one clan has access to the ship because they're all veterans and another clan doesn't. Now, right now, I don't think there's going to be a clan that won't have, for example, a Thunderer, but in future there might be, and I think it's a good rule to keep in. And like I said, it keeps the meta changing a little bit. In other restrictions, I think for research bureau ships, there's a cooldown of 6 months after introduction before they can be fielded, just because it can take quite a lot of time to get a research bureau ship, right? They're supposed to be long-term goals. There's a lot of work involved in getting one, and we don't want to have to force people to, like non-stop play for 2 weeks before COTS to get that ship unlocked. That's new. So they'll be out for the 6 months. And as for regular tech tree ships, they'll be banned for 1 month of full release. So not early access, but like 1 month that they're fully available on tech tree, and then after that they can be fielded.
I see. I don't actually have the timetable in front of me. I should have looked this up. But do either of you know? Does that mean that technically the Italian battleship line will be?
No, it won't.
So it will be available in or not available in COTS?
No, it won't. The
won't, okay.
Italian battleship line is going to be in early access for a while. So I think the earliest it could be fielded in KoTS would be 0, 10, 4, or 5.
Okay. That's because that would be interesting. I was doing the math in my head and I thought, is it going to be available to be used like right in the middle of KoTS? Or
No, but and if a ship becomes available in the middle, it'll still be out. It has to be available from the beginning to the end. So nothing much should change.
Sure.
I also I feel I need to clarify as well, right? I don't want to come across as like the person or us as a wargaming coming in and now like dictating all these rules that are going to change. Like we do want to work with the community on those, and the like past adjudicators and organizers are all still very much of the part of this process right now. I feel like I need to push a little bit for the ship banning to get people to try it once, to be able to like give me proper qualified feedback whether or not they liked it. But apart from that, I think the rules are going to be pretty much the same.
So can I ask a question then on giving feedback? So I thought the survey was good. Two-part question. One, do you ever expect results of surveys like that to be openly published? And then kind of a follow-up to that would be, if I had something that I thought was a really solid idea and was willing to spell it out in detail, or a clan did, or a group of players, what's the best way to communicate that and actually get some attention to it? Assuming something that is, not unreasonable, but something that fits all of the things wargaming needs for, a clan battle suggestion or a KoTS suggestion or something like that.
First of all, to the results of the survey, I've already shared them with the organizers. I'll try and compile like a kind of like publicly accessible version in the next few days. But honestly, there's nothing much surprising in the survey. I wanted some validation on whether or not changes to some rules were wanted, like the cooldown rules and etc. Like I asked the CV question just to get a feel of the current mood. But mainly I was interested in like getting some additional feedback on just some things that people appreciate about KoTS, that they don't like about KoTS, and what they kind of like for prizing, and to just get kind of a bit of a demographic of the audience that's involved in KoTS. So I don't think it's going to be particularly exciting or surprising, the results, but I'm most likely going to share them anyway.
Very nice. So
I found that I forgot the second part of that question, actually.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of tell a short story. Like about a year and a half ago, when clan battles started having, after the CV rework, and there was a lot of contention over where the CV should or shouldn't be in, I put together a list of suggestions that I thought were reasonable and sent it to a couple of the community people in NA. I basically got confirmation they saw it, and some of the things, and I don't think I was the only one that came up with some of the ideas, but some of the things were implemented pretty quickly in some of the future seasons, and maybe they were already on Wargaming's radar, maybe somebody saw it, and maybe multiple people submitted things. But if somebody had a well thought out plan for, hey, this is maybe where we could strike a balance, is there any way for an individual or a clan or a group of players to say, hey, we think this is really reasonable, will you at least look at this?
So it depends a little bit what kind of feature or like aspect we're talking about. If we're talking about something like KoTS, then absolutely. After every KoTS, there will be an opportunity to give feedback specifically on the rule set on that tournament, and we will I will make sure to check that feedback. And if I find something that I think is worth bringing up or implementing, then I'll work on that. As to our regular kind of features and update releases that come out, I can really only encourage everybody to head to the forums. This is, in my opinion, the best way. There'll be feedback threads created by us specifically for topics, and to leave feedback there. Like we have quite a lot of community managers that spend a not insignificant amount of time going through, reading, compiling, and kind of editing that feedback to present to devs. But like if I can just look at it from my perspective, if I see a really outstanding point of feedback, something that I just think like, hey, this is a fantastic idea, we should do this, I will ping it to the dev team, they'll ping it around internally, and they'll have a look at it, right? Doesn't mean it's going to get implemented, but at least it means it's going to get looked at and possibly discussed.
Sure.
But yeah, I can really recommend leave feedback in the feedback threads after updates and for specific features.
Very good.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, everybody, I think it's it's an axiom of the internet that nobody listens to feedback. So it's always really nice to hear specifically, this is how we listen to feedback, and this is the best way you can get it to us.
It's hard to often take a specific point of feedback and then point at hey, down the line this is a feature that's changed in this way because of this feedback. Part of that has also to do with how our development works, because right now we are living in a 0.10.0 on live server, right? 0.10.1 is almost around the corner, which means that the devs have already actually finished working pretty much on 0.10.1, apart from the last bit of QA, and are concentrating on polishing 0.10.2 for release, while at the same time working on 0.10.3 and 4, and maybe some features that might only come in 5 and 6. So there's it's quite because we have such a high cadence of updates. There's a lot of work that's done on updates in the future. So if we have something new that we want to implement, we can't necessarily now say, hey, we have an update due in 3 days. Let's just roll it into that. That's not how it works, right? It needs to go. I mean, theoretically, it may be possible, but the potential for breaking everything is very big.
Certainly.
So it takes a bit of time, right? Another good example is the current captain skill rework.
Yes.
And just the fact that we got a lot of feedback for the captain skill, we got a lot of feedback for Deadeye, but it's such a massive update that touched so many parts of the game and touched the meta in so many ways that it really takes a while to analyze and to have a look at the data. We know what the feedback is. That's not the issue, right? But now we need to have a look at what's the impact, how do things, how are things affected in game? Which ships does it affect? How many people pick each skill? So we have to compile this and kind of work on just an internal analysis of the balance before we can make a change based on this and based on the feedback that we've got, to decide what are we going to change right now.
Yeah,
and it's hard that we can't just say hey, people on the forum say Deadeye is crap, let's just remove it.
Well, it's not crap. I mean, the skill as a concept is not crap. And Borla and I have talked about this ad nauseum, and we won't, bore the audience or you with our little opinions on it. But I mean, the idea of having a skill that makes a battleship more accurate is not a bad skill in general.
I agree with this concept. I personally, if you want to hear my opinion, I'd like the skill to be active when the battleship is in a contested cap. That's my kind of battleship.
Nice.
Amazing. I think we just got the cherry on top of this interview right there, as we know what Conway wants from Deadeye.
Breaking news. Deadeye is being updated to only activate in a cap.
Please don't put that information out there.
That's
what I look. That's the kind of battleship player I am. I like to push W and I like to push people's faces. But I know this is not workable for most battleships and most battleship players as well.
Well, but the Deadeye did something. It had a lot of negative effects, sure, but it had some extraordinarily positive ones too. And I would argue that, frankly, battleships became much more dangerous with something that allows good aim to be rewarded. Like if you are good at placing your shots, I'll just name drop him right now. We have a very nice German man in my clan named Righteous Fury who, I don't know how he lands his shots the way he does, but he just does. He's just good at aiming, and he's rewarded with Deadeye because the shots go where he tells them to go. So if it suddenly, battleships that had bad Sigma or bad dispersion, they get a major buff to how they're able to be played. So, for example, the Grosse Kurfürst can now be played as a sniper, and it's not even a joke. It's pretty good. It plays like a Montana with... I think was it Doyle Borla who said it plays like a Montana with better ballistics now and better armor, and it's suddenly you go, oh my god, I had no idea this could be played this way, which is exciting for a player to get a hold on and then take it out into game and go, well, I want to try this myself.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and there's that aspect, of course, but then there's also the drawback aspect of how does it affect the cruisers now, right? That if they show broadside at 20 kilometers, they can expect someone to take that shot. It's something that we're looking at very, very closely right now, and I hope that we're going to have some concrete updates and some results coming for that soon. But just as an example of how long it takes for the feedback to kind of get processed in our cycle of development, and it can be a bit frustrating, I think, from a player perspective, even from a community manager perspective, because we're the ones in the trenches in brackets, right?
You're the
collecting
lightning
feedback
rod,
and
yeah.
talking to the players about this, and I would love to be able to go and it's like, oh yeah, you complained about this, like here's the change, but it's just not how it works, and there's always this big, like we balance based on spreadsheets meme going around, and to a certain extent, that's also a good thing because we have such detailed data on so many aspects of the game that we can look at it and we can say like, hey, this is an issue or this is not an issue, and then we can kind of use that to validate or invalidate feedback that we get. So yeah, it's a process.
Well, we appreciate you being, as open as you are about it, just because sometimes I think a lot of players feel as though the giant monolithic, face of a game company is one of, what's the game? Spreadsheet says it's fine, comrade. That's the meme,
exactly,
of course,
yeah.
and
yes, but there are really situations where spreadsheet does say it's fine, and that's something that. Sorry, 1 second. Child out.
Sure, no problem. How's your dog, Borla?
Oh, he loves the snow. I don't know if you've ever seen like Scarface when Tony's got his face in the pile of. That's my dog with snow.
In the pile of drugs. That's your dog.
Yeah, it was 0 degrees out the other day, and he wanted out, and he's out there for 15-20 minutes, doesn't come back in, and so I go check on him, and we have like 10-12 inches of snow on the ground. He had dug down, found a femur bone from a cow, because that's what a 170-pound puppy will chew on.
Right.
He had found it, and he was laying stomach down, completely sprawled out in the snow, just gnawing on the bone, happy as can be.
Your dog weighs more than I do, Borla.
And he's not quite 10 months old.
Just
wow.
Have a kid already, for Christ's sake. God.
I love big dogs though. Anyway, look, I think that's probably going to be turned into a meme anyway. So probably best skip this line of reasoning. But I was just going to point out that sometimes we do get feedback on something, and then we look at our data and we just see like, yes, this is what you think is happening, but actually it isn't.
Here's a question on that with the data. And so one of the things Boggzy and I have talked about, certain skills, especially the skills that cost a lot of points, 3 or 4 points, like Deadeye, pretty much it feels like almost everyone is taking it. And then there's other skills that it feels like almost no one is taking. Is that something Wargaming will look at as feedback and say, hey, if these skills are always being taken, maybe they're a little too strong, or they don't cost enough, and if they're not taken, maybe they should be cheaper or buffed?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the points that we're looking at. It's not just the impact of those skills, but also like how many people, like what percentage of the people playing this kind of ship or this kind of class are taking this skill. And if it's, I agree, if it's like if 90% of all players pick one skill, then it becomes not really a choice anymore, right? But it's just something that you have to be competitive. And the whole point of the captain skill rework was to try and get give people the ability to have more choices and have more variety.
Not have one standard build for the ship, but have maybe a couple that could work.
Yeah, just have options, right? Like if you want to build it differently because you want to emphasize a specific aspect of your ship, or more survivable, more accurate, or something, it should be a choice. But like I said, this is something that we're very much awaiting the internal report on this, and then decisions will be made on what and if it's going to get changed.
Yeah. Well, so you've answered all of our questions about KoTS, I think, to a greater degree than either Borla and I were expecting. So thank you for doing that. I know you have a couple kids that you're wrangling while you chat with us, so we won't keep you for too much longer. I think there are a few more questions we'd like to ask real quick. Specifically, I don't know how much you're able to let us know about the next season of Clan Battles, but it's very intriguing to us that Wargaming has agreed to essentially run a, an ever-changing possibility of ship bans or ship limitations, which I think sort of pricked up everybody's ears in the competitive community. So can I ask you if you guys are leaning one way or the other regarding ship limitations, outright ship bans? Do you have can you tell us if one of those seems more appealing to you guys now?
So right now, we've implemented the system, and I think the plan is we like there's no like preset from our side of we know when the season starts we want to ban this or this ship. So it's going to be kind of evolving, and we're going to keep looking at what kind of setups are people picking, which ships are the most popular, and then we may just say like, hey, this ship that's most popular, like play without it for a week or something.
Sure.
So it's just gonna mix up the meta a little bit, and like I said, I don't have a concrete plan or access to a concrete plan on what's going to be changed yet, and I think it's mostly going to just be in reaction to what the community does and how the meta evolves over the season. So it's a bit of an experiment for us, but I think it's going to be fun, and I think it's going to really like push people to try different setups and pick different strategies throughout the season, which is something that I like, because I feel it keeps it interesting.
So to clarify, it sounds like those ship limits or bans are not going to be determined until the season progresses, and I also so are different servers going to have different bans if metas are different?
Oh, that's a really good question that I absolutely have no answer to right now. I'd have to check.
That's okay.
I'm pretty sure we can, but don't think we will. Maybe if the meta on one cluster is very, very different to one on another, then we may be looking at something like this.
Well, with cross-server clan battles, that would be with cross-server clan
sure,
battles.
We have cross-server clan battles, so you've answered your own question, so we can't.
Fair enough.
No, that's fair.
Borla, is there anything else you'd like to ask before I get to my last maybe two questions, real quick questions?
I would like to, thank Conway for his time and being open on some of these things. I guess one other question on the skill rework, going back to that, the different skills for each class are a nice change. I think if some of them get balanced, it could be really great. With cruisers, though, the change of fire times for Supercruisers and the fact that we have quite a few cute cruisers that are AP only in the British line kind of handicaps those skills. Would there be any thought to changing the fire time on Supercruisers back to a normal time, and or having some different skills for those that can't make use of the HE improvements?
I don't have an answer to that yet. Like I said, any changes to the skill system are currently awaiting our balance report. And I know it impacted Supercruisers because of the reduced you can't have fire prevention anymore, but you burn longer.
Right.
But part of that is now going to be looking at, hey, did that actually affect the performance of Supercruisers, and by how much? And do we need to change something? Do we need to make an adjustment to the fire like duration or something? But I can't say anything to results of that yet. Like I said, we're waiting for the report right now, and as soon as that's done, we're going to work on figuring out what needs to get changed.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Well, the first question I have, I guess, is it's actually a little segment that I've been doing on this podcast for I think 60 of the 66. This is 67, so I think 60 or so of the episodes. We have a little segment called Sink a Ship, where we encourage our guests to pretend as though they are a Wargaming employee and they do some Mission Impossible ninja shenanigans, and they steal Sub-Octavian's access card, and they go down into the vault, and they open up the spreadsheet, and they delete a ship from existence completely. Since you have the closest opportunity to actually do that of anybody here, if there was a ship that you had to sink, just remove it from the game.
Hypothetically.
Yes, hypothetically, of course. We know you would never do that. Not a class, not a line of ships, as some of our greedy guests want to sink all CVs or sink all French battleships or what have you. What would be one ship, Conway, one ship that you would sink, send to the sea?
Thunderer.
Do tell.
I find it very frustrating from my perspective to play against. When I play battleships, I like to play pushy battleships. I like to take my Yamato up to the cap circle. I like to go and do some secondary brawling. And if there's someone at the back sitting, double fires to me every minute, then that's really difficult. And I think if I personally could remove a ship, I would delete Thunderer.
It sounds like you're saying that 10K and a fire every 24 seconds is not fun and engaging.
But look, if I...
I'm just teasing, of course.
Yeah, yeah, that would be my pick.
Okay, fair enough. And my last question for you would be, are we ever going to get a King of the Sea Pepsi halftime show, and can we please have Justin Bieber perform?
Look, if over my dead body, Justin Bieber, a Pepsi halftime show. I also like if you were a watcher of my stream, you'll probably notice I don't drink Pepsi. I drink the other beverage, so I don't think I could endorse Pepsi. In
Bourbon?
Bourbon?
That's the other beverage, right?
Yeah, we're Americans. You got to remember, it's Pepsi or bourbon,
Yes.
brother.
Okay, fair enough. But no, I can't into bourbon.
Sure. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, my man. We appreciate you getting back to us and coming on and sharing what you have. Keep doing what you're doing because you're a lot of fun to watch, and we think you do a good job. So thank you again very much for coming on.
Yeah, we appreciate your time and the hard work, and understand that sometimes you're in a difficult position of trying to answer questions from people who are very upset, sometimes not always the most informed. There's kind of a rough spot that you're in often, and we appreciate that you try to do the best to be positive about it and also be willing to come on shows like this and just have an open conversation. So Thank you very much.
Yeah, look, I hope I was able to give a little bit of insight, but I would really like to remind people that World of Warships is it's a live game. It's evolving, right? And if something is a bit unfun to you today, it may very well change tomorrow, because we look at these things and we want to keep changing and evolving the game. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more things that we'll do this year that'll annoy you, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of things that we do that you'll be happy about, and hopefully we'll come out on the positive side, and hopefully you'll keep enjoying the game as much as we do. And yes, keep an eye out for KoTS. If you don't know yet, it's going to happen at towards the end of April. Dates will be announced soon, TM as usual, and
Looking forward to it
today.
Thank you, Conway.
Hopefully I don't get in too much trouble for what I said today, but I appreciate these kind of discussions as well, and hopefully I was able to give some insight.
Well, and we too, it's really helpful when Wargaming employees come on and chat, because it humanizes all of you, and in turn it humanizes the game company as well. And lets you hear from a human being who can say, oh, yeah, no, we totally get that that's frustrating, but we don't want to overcorrect and fishtail the game in a bad way, like, a car on ice or something. So just be patient, and we'll figure it out, and we'll try to make you happier. I feel like that always leaves the player base feeling a little better than before. So thank you, and Borla, thank you again, as always, for being my co-host. To everybody listening, thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time on Get to Know World of Warships.